Hey guys, I'm Drago, and before we even start this video, I need to say something. And that is a huge thank you for all of the support on the last video, or the video a couple of videos ago, the Into the Pit redraw one. I could never have expected that many views and that many likes and that many people enjoying it. It actually blows my mind, and I just really need to say thank you for that. And also because of that support, I was able to buy myself a brand new iPad. My old iPad, which I got back in 2018-ish, it basically just died on me. It went poof, it just no more. And I had no prospects of being able to afford a new one for ages and ages. But with that video unexpectedly doing as well as it did, and all the support you guys gave me, I've been able to buy a brand new one. So thank you so much for that. Now, not having an iPad means it's been a good year since I last used Procreate. And as such, I am really not used to it anymore. So I thought it'd be funny to record me sort of struggling, basically, to get back into using it. This piece of art you're going to see was a collaboration with my good friend Leon. Leon is an amazing, really talented artist. Links to his social media will be in the description. You should go give him all the love and support you give me because he really deserves it. Basically, Leon did the initial sketch and I then took that and did it digitally. I finished it off. It was a really fun collaboration to do, and it was really interesting to actually blend our two styles together. With that being said, let's go on with speed paint. Well, unlike most of my videos, we're not starting off with a sketch since it's already done. So we're basically hopping straight into doing the line art. Now, I do have an Apple Pencil. It's the old Gen 1 and it's really irritating. I honestly hate it. It'll cut in and out while I'm drawing. It'll leave my lines sort of segmented with gaps. And then the nib, right? The nib unscrews while I'm drawing, so eventually it just falls off. It actually fell off while I was drawing this and I couldn't find it for ages. So I ended up getting really annoyed and using a bit of masking tape just to tape it on there so it would stop unscrewing and falling off. Now you can see me doing loads of sort of squiggly lines just to try and get used to it again. The way the stabilizer and the pressure sensitivity on Procreate feels is so different to what I'm used to. As you know, I use Paint Tool Side 2 usually when I'm drawing on my computer, and it just feels so different. Plus, I use a pad tablet when drawing on my computer. So those are the ones that don't have the screen on them. They are just a pad that you draw on, but you're looking at your monitor screen, not the screen of the tablet. Here, I'm drawing directly onto the screen, so that is also quite foreign to me. And you're probably thinking, well, it's just like drawing on paper, why is it different? I was never much of a traditional artist. I never did much of drawing on paper, apart from when I was really young, and apart from in school and college when I took art, but that was mostly painting than drawing. So yeah, sort of drawing on paper is not something I've done often. I don't have a physical sketchbook anywhere. I've literally jumped into digital art and that's just what I've done for all these years. So all of this is actually really foreign to me. Not to say that I can't sketch on paper, I can. And it can be quite fun to just sit with a bit of paper and sketching. But if I want to do some doodling and sketching, I tend to pick up my iPad and do it on Procreate rather than picking up a piece of paper and a pencil and doing it that way. Here's a testament to how long it took me to get used to this again. Line art does tend to take me a long time because I do quite detailed line art. If I'm doing it on computer, it takes me 1-2 hours, 3 at the most. On this though, it took me 4 hours. It took me over 4 hours, and that was spread across 2 days. I don't know, when I use Procreate, I feel like everything has to be a lot more accurate. The tiniest gap can screw up where I'm adding the black, and the lines are so sort of crisp that if you make a mistake, it's so visible. Whereas on site, I feel like you could be a lot looser with your lines. So Procreate is just so different to me, and having that year's gap where it already took me ages before to get used to it, it's gonna take me ages to get used to it again. But I was able to still use a lot of the techniques I normally use. That's using sort of line work, as it would be called on side, to make the straight metal bars, using different layers and erasing so that I don't have to worry about erasing around lines already there. And with some fiddling with opacity and the size and stuff, I can still do my lines I like to do on the 3D edges. Though I definitely didn't do as much line weight variation as I usually do, and I think that's because I was so focused on getting everything else right that it didn't cross my mind to do it. Because usually I would go around and thicken some lines just to let some things pop and make them a bit bolder, but I was just concentrating so much on making this look good, and I wanted it to look good because this is a collaboration. I didn't want to really ruin Leon's art. You know, I felt like I had this pressure that I could have made it look really bad. But yeah, because of all that, I kind of forgot to go back and do a lot of the variation. But I think sort of it wasn't that noticeable. I think it was sort of thing that only I noticed, and now I've pointed it out, you're gonna notice it. There were times that I was struggling to make out what was going on in the sketch, and that's nothing against Leon. Leon is an amazing artist, his sketch was amazing, but it was because the sort of resolution wasn't so good. Also because we had these really thick pencil lines compared to a really thin line work pen that I was using. So what I ended up doing was actually sketching out my own teeth, doing it how I would usually do it with Springtrap, and then going over that. I actually really like that because it goes back into what I said about blending our two styles together. While I kept the general shape of Springtrap from Leon's sketch, which kept his style in there, it made it more recognisable for his style, really sort of exaggerated his part of the collaboration. I did add my own flair to parts, and I also, obviously the colouring was all mine. But I really wanted to get as close to the sketch as possible to really keep Leon's flair in his collaboration, because otherwise it wouldn't be much of a collaboration. I decided to add a lot more flesh into this. You know, Springtrap has those weird sort of, I don't even know what they are. They're like guts, but they're like everywhere, all over his body. I don't think they were in the sketch Leon did, but it's sort of natural for me to add those, so I ended up doing it. Leon, I'm sorry, I kept adding my own things and I feel bad for it. I hope it's still recognisable as your style. So I want to make sure you get the credit you deserve. So like I said, there's going to be links to his social media in the description. Please do go give him love and support. He really, really deserves it. Now with Procreate I have to do my base layer of colour so different to how I would do it on Sai. On Sai I would fill the canvas using a layer below my line art, then I'd go onto the line art, use Magic Wand tool, select around the line art and then delete. The colour that is outside of the lines. However, like I was saying earlier, Procreate is so finicky with like the tiniest pixel gap that you don't even notice, won't let it do the magic wand tool. And with how thin I have my line art, it just does not let me do it. So I had to go a different approach, and that was meticulously manually erasing around the line art myself. This took so much time, it absolutely sucked. I hate having to do this method. If anyone knows a better method, please do let me know. I'd love to be able to speed up my art process with Procreate, because this whole thing, right, this whole piece of art, in total it took me 9 hours and 39 minutes, and that was spread across 3 days. This was supposed to be my monthly Springtrap art, and I actually managed to finish it on the last day of the month. So thankfully I did manage to make that deadline, but god was it close. Once I had my base layer though, I could do what I normally do, and that is using my clipping mask layers, which makes sure that what you're drawing doesn't go outside of the lines of the previous layer. This is what I do before going into my painting and texturing, because then I can put the layers on preserve opacity, which I think is called alpha lock on Procreate. It's basically the same thing as a clipping mask, but you can draw on the same layer without going outside the shape of that layer. It took me ages to find a brush that I wanted to use for this, and it really made me realise I need to go and find and download some brushes for Procreate. What I normally use for texturing is the watercolour brush on Sai. So that's a brush that you can really use your pressure sensitivity for. Basically, if you push down hard, you'll put down a lot of saturated colour, but if you push lighter, you can blend that out and really get some smooth transitions as well as some harsher edges. But here on Procreate, I could not find a brush that did that. I tried the watercolour brush, but it just wasn't working the same. So again, if anyone knows some good brushes to Procreate, do let me know. If anyone knows a brush that is similar to the watercolour brush on Paint Tool Sai, then yeah, that would be really helpful. But eventually I actually ended up using a charcoal, which really surprised me. I wouldn't have thought I'd be using one of those, but it actually had a lot of sort of blendability to it, and it had a really good texture which I think fits Springtrap. With all the texturing I wanted it was time to think about lighting. Now, I wanted to do a full background for this. I was going to have it like roughly painting the FNAF 3 area in the background and then having that blurred. But I was looking at the time, like this was the last day I had. I didn't have long to get this done. So I had to go a bit more abstract. And well, what better is Springtrap than purple? Because, well, purple guy. So before going into proper shading, I started actually just lighting it in general. And that was adding a few layers to get an idea of where my light source is coming from and where the darkest shadows will be. And also sort of generally giving Springtrap a purple tint to match the colour of the lighting. Now on my iPad this looked way less red. Here looking to the computer screen it looks so much more saturated and pink. But on my iPad it was a lot more almost not desaturated but not as harsh. It blended a lot better. So I promise you this looked better on my iPad. So I did actually do something that I don't normally do, and that was adding a base layer of shadows and erasing it rather than adding the shadows in. What I'd usually do is add in shadows and blend them out with a blur brush from Psy. But here you can use the airbrushes, but it's not quite the same. And I felt I had more control with the eraser. I also remembered to add some backlight. Basically you add just a rim of light around the darker shadow areas. Just helps add a little bit more realism and helps the character pop from the background. With that base layer done, I did use my airbrush to add in some highlights, as well as just making some shadows in areas more refined and darker. Before going into the really refined shading, I decided to start adding some effect, and this was so I knew what would be mostly covered up, so I wouldn't be wasting time shading parts that are going to be covered. So finally going into refined shading, I did this exactly how I'd normally do it on Psy, and that is taking my line brush and basically on a overlay layer, just draw in some harsher shadows and harsher highlights. And these are ones that would have just the clean hard edge, basically like cell shading. Sometimes I might soften them a bit with a Gaussian blur filter, but that just depends on the piece and if I think that'll fit. But here I think the harsher unblurred edges work quite well. It really allowed some areas to be really quite bold and different from each other. The final things I wanted to do was some effects. I love the flare pen from Procreate. I can literally just add that eye flare just with one tap of my pen. It was great. And I also felt like the background was a bit bland. So I added some of these sort of ball light things that you get, you know, those reflections on lenses you can get. Added those in, blurred them a bit, added some over the top as well and blurred those. And I think it just really did add an extra layer that helped. And the final thing was just another layer, added some white streaks on areas that would have a really harsh, really shiny highlight. So basically on the lens of the eyes, on the wires where the light is directly hitting it, on the metal where the light is directly hitting it, just those really, really bright highlights. And finally, with all that said and done, 9 hours later, over 3 days, it was finally done. The deadline for this was so tight, and I'm so pleased I actually got it done in time for the end of the month. I didn't really like it at first, but looking at it again now, it has grown on me. I think for my first attempt at Procreate after a year's absence, this isn't that bad, and the blending of my style with Leon's style actually looks really, really nice. So a huge thank you to Leon for doing this collaboration with me. It was so much fun, and I hope we can do more in the future. Once again, his social media is in the description. Go give him love and support. He really deserves it. He's a super talented artist, and he's a really, really good guy and friend as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me dive into Procreate again and struggle. Let me know what you'd like to see for the next video. You can also join my Discord server and suggest videos there. But with all that said, thanks for watching, guys. Maybe consider subscribing and liking. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!